Now 이제 당의 수비 냠는 데라 시에도 그생각도 동화 단행의 쇠바세리 신도 에레치자당을 지게 동화들이야 연대신의 직견이신의 따야다 연대신의 따야로서 다양한도 연대신의 따바이나 너소수이야 동화디 지 강아지게 동화를 중요하고요 난 동화디 봐 근데 동화디 중요한 때에 알이야 아니지 저게 삼다이도 안데려야 안 소수가 나게세야 나게다 소수가 나게는 나게세지 나게세야 판도도 세다 안데니게 랑라 랑게 동아지 저디 되네 동아데 다도 레자다디 야고 좀 텔레테네다 소수가 네 경험을 얘기 대부 민제다 세점어바나 만용 뭐에 차고래 삼다 나데니게 기여도 동아디 기와도 당할이야 나게 맞죠 야고도 세면 나게 되네 나게 개발 좀 세트그래서 안디마시 안시에 심지어 탐체 신 라나시 신 동아이 나데가 강아이 엔디솔리아 되네바 되네게 동아지에 잔나는 베게 안니시게야다 지나다 되네게 어디 셴는 민니시게야 랑기 동아 좀 어때래 되네 다운도 렌제 될래 안는 아게 세야라 소바다 안디마시 나데네게 라시니가 동아에 유디 가르르테니어서 냐마 디버사와트네 용고를 제가 TV 테이블에 제가다 디버디 자오기는 지금에선 디버를 쳔야 디 라제니가 리테오에 유디 안 개월레테네 용고를 제가다 디오요 유 안데 개와도 두기 셈베게 개와 두야래야는 가시um 구비용원에 디오도 되게 삼박용고리 예서 한게 생각할 텐데 쉬거래.
Good evening. So when we were last together a few weeks ago, we concluded looking at the first of the three divisions of patience and the cultivating the patience that accepts suffering. So this division was from verses 12 to 21. So we concluded this first division by looking at the benefits that can be gained through suffering, such as overcoming one's pride. Because through experiencing suffering, one's haughty arrogance is challenged and more easily dispelled. And also, second benefit of that can be gained through suffering is that compassion more readily arises for others, in particular when one recognizes others suffering in the same way or for the same reasons as one is oneself. And a third benefit that can come through suffering is that you're recognizing that the suffering has come about in dependence on causes, and those causes were necessarily non-virtue accumulated in the past. This strengthens one's determination to turn away from non-virtue, to break one's habituation to the afflictions. And this, as a companion, strengthens our determination to cultivate the opposing, the contrary ways of thinking, virtuous ways of thinking, virtuous minds. So these are some of the benefits that can be gained through suffering. Tonight we'll start with looking at the second of the three divisions of patience. This is cultivating the patience intent on Dharma. And this runs from the 22nd to 34th verses.
네 파신 두에 냠는 네 지게 동반이다 네 미다발로 소바다 레균데라 소바 니네 차사래야 네바 시도 디니기 쉬지 소리야 저기 개위 저와 냠는 가르가르 치우고 지파 지야와 체파지 지 침시의 퇴섬지 제버지 디네 된다 하고 와들 네바시 원래 제자다 디니기 네바들 안델이야 디니안에 야도 무디셰 네 고미야들이야 네 매발라 디치게 매바스 철랭해버셈 매바스 디니기 텔레 서가지고 그래서 지상가블이야 디니기 냠는 지엘이야 안지게 진인 모터바다 Tenegi lelo modo show yunguru wada, Tinesa Tenegi Yamne Chemubatilla, Seva, Tenegi, Kase Nangi, Yamne Chigin Sembe, some much cold, Wada Tenegi, Seva said Tenegi Cholang as we Sevasita, giving Yamne Java, Hazugim, Majiki, Azugated, Lanja Mayimba Dorja City, Tibili, Yomo Berit Papayadang, Ti Docho Kivi Chedike, Nyamsuliagete, Yimbadi, Jebaja Hakuache, Dina Hakuaching Yabrache, the name Yabiki Dondadi, Yane Yado, Mujishek, Simbalaya, Gawatilla, Gavuche, the Comiatella, Cancile, Cholangism, Shebase, Tisin, Tinishilagore, Donarus.
Yes. Second outline, cultivating a patience that is intent on Dharma. So this word that's translated as intent, it's most commonly will be translated as certainty or is definite about the Dharma or ascertains the Dharma, maybe not ascertains, but definite or certain about the Dharma. So how this works in with patience, so cultivating the patience that is intent on Dharma. And again, this word intent here is usually about being certain or determined in the Dharma. So it refers to being patient in the process of cultivating the qualities of the Dharma within one's mind, which involves the twofold process of the information that one gathers, thinking about it. So using the qualities on investigation and analysis. So analyzing, thinking about the Dharma that one is hearing or reading, and coming to ascertain definite understanding. And then together with this, the second aspect is to repeatedly, over a sustained period, meditate or reflect on what one is investigating, so as to bring habituation. So there are these two components. The one, which is one's investigating to develop a deep understanding, and together with this is to do this process repeatedly so that one develops habituation. And this is in relation to all the various virtuous qualities one needs to cultivate. It's usually presented in relation to the wisdom, understanding, emptiness, but with all the virtuous qualities, ethics, generosity, love, compassion, in that one needs to apply oneself consistently to understand the topic and to integrate the topic. And for that, and to do so, one needs to rely on patience so that the mind does not become disturbed in the hardships of cultivating familiarity with virtuous ways of thinking and breaking of familiarity with afflicted ways of thinking.
Yeah, now the one darling is Susulia. And she in the Nasa Ganga is chair, the Ganga del Park, Chick down to Lens, the Ganga de Park, Chunchur season, Kayo Marasambe, season, Ganga del Dushan, some down the Ganga down to Limbaso. But that is Chunchu the Kayo Marasambe, some down in it, Ganga del Seva, down to Limba, Chargurwan, the Ganga did. Dunga down to Limba said, Dunga de Dunga de Lemiche, Dunga de Kayo Madi, Kayo tea, lady women go to Sa, that the next comes some Taja, Dunga de Park. Chunchura some daddy Gaia must be two and guiding is to listen to some Davenda, Dunga Daddy Lembasel. That Sherling, yes, and said, and to cover letter, she or that they don't buy some that they got like her, sometimes jam need you go met some gentleman to do us and pick a like her, to collect come summary some bits your what answer. Kazeling to give it our Yamlin Chelia. Never never Lingorwa, says Antelia and Sherling never sembach and Chedi, and Dick Najugi, Tabat, Jikim, Comatolati, Keva Dilatin to go Chikawadi, Najugi to my said and dig to Gutiris, how watch it, says again, the Nigi Chedilla, Tonin, Delia, the Kahuchin or Daddy, Yam Sulini, that Nigi, Gamma Karachumana, take Chick, then his search and Yamsu Lemba, killing his and some died, Cholang Yesim, Shiva said, Tiri, Ya, Cholang ever, simply Shiva to chain Yamlin Chelia, Chedi, Yamji, usually Miche, Di, Yamlin Chi said, Dick or straight to watch.
So the three divisions of patience. The first that we've just concluded looking at, so from the 12th to the 21st verses, is a patience that willingly accepts suffering. So this is the hardships that we generally think of in life, what people say to us, how our body feels, illness, and so forth. So these kinds of problems. And willingly accepting such suffering means coming to see them in their truer light, that they're not such a big deal, that they really do not need to overwhelm me and overwhelm my mind. In other words, that the afflictions should not be arising, because it's not actually such a big deal. So this is that first type of patience that we've been looking at. Now the second, which we start tonight, cultivating the patience that is intent on Dharma. So this intent on Dharma means, the qualities of the Dharma, and one is intent or one has determination, one is determined to develop those qualities within. So the attitude of being determined in relation to the Dharma comes about in relation to having come to understand the Dharma, understand the benefits of cultivating the various minds of the Dharma, as well as the process by which to do so. And in this way, understanding the great benefits that come from developing these various virtuous minds and the process by which to do so, one develops a determination or an intent on the Dharma. And the method to do so is to hear teachings and to reflect on them. And in doing so, one needs to do so repeatedly over a sustained period, continuously. And this will mean one encounters hardships. For example, if one's developing love and compassion, one hears the teachings, understands how to do so, but to do the same meditation all the time, that can be challenging. To apply what one is meditating on, or the technique one is cultivating in meditation in daily life with challenging people, this can be difficult. This is where one needs to rely on the patience that is intent on the Dharma. So this then is the second type of patience in relation to ensuring the mind stays undisturbed whilst training in the qualities of the Dharma.
Oh yeah, I didn't see the language. Tiba la so dunga yi, and junior chilla mutover. Semi namla chiti to. Deda gunjang genji gulus.
The 22nd verse. As I do not get angry with great sources of suffering such as the bile, then why get angry at those with mind? All of them are also impelled by conditions.
Nanzu dadi mi shen yi ngaruzu nyuba chena ngaruzu mitelia pa kora langor wada kora naji pa madu pa le anu kora lang pa gyunju je da pa cewa ji len lo ya ge nganzun samnu ji di yungor wada jiza dine za an telia karjene je orese orta ngajele di anju ge gansa rang shengi rang la ya Nuva Chicken, Gansa, Telia, Azulia, Quarter Lango, Cares, Quarter Lango, Gimzas, Kayo, Mares, or that. Donna Garci or Sinem. Tibala so Dunga Yi Juni Chella, Mito, said. Jazanda Hazule, near Nazi community, Rangaraju, Sulina, Lulia, and Lung Tiba Begans, Sumung, Simung Tibegans, Tila Soba, City Tibache, Lung Che, Begans, Sumores. Jisum Chanyambo, Yubi Kablang and Subuti, what is it? Lungti Begasum, the Chamanium Bache, and Tuyodu, and the Genshu, Diodu, and answer the Nenas Mambo, what is. Cesar, that Lungti Begasum, Chamanium Badi, and the Dumayan, Nenas Yonaga, Dumay, Jumay near Chambodiris, Charity, or that Diris. Cesar, Azulia, Dumayoyagi, you cannot tell you that you delight in the Yungo, Chisanganzo. Lana, Jun Dana Carta was in it, Lungti Begason Tuba, Tubi, Champinyumba, Dongatamji, Yuzawa, Dunga, Lula, Nena, Sagazawa, Dirisha, some Delia, Jun Daji, Delaquan Lango was, Delaquan Malama chair, and the Manzil Nevici, Midelia, and Semia Namla Giti Tosse, Midela Carson talk, the talk, Kim Zaka Marawasi, or that, it is done that disorder. Then Gyun Dasa Di Anzu Karta was an Anzu Lula Nen Nazaraja Gang Tedu, Anzu and Nen as a Yonsaki, you Lunchi Begasun Chamanya Batella, and the quarter segment was or that quarter segment was, then you did Gyun or Atago, my DQ and some woman, the quarter segment was. Jesa, tell a quarter Mazawache, and as a new immediately, and Simeon Namla Chiti, same media Kashin Kong Pa and the corn language, yes, sir, that is word.
Super.
And she's that Chiti Cho said, Simeon Namla Chiti Cho said, Manzul never gave media Kashin the corn language, yes, or that.
So here, what is being addressed is, as an illustration, when someone gets angry, expresses their anger at us, or maybe not even anger, when they act towards us in a way we do not like, we all too often, anger arises and we express anger at them. So this is then presented first in the first two lines, as I do not get angry with great sources of suffering, such as the bile. So this refers to the traditional Tibetan medicine's understanding of how illness comes about, that the body, when it's healthy, there are the three humours of the bile, of phlegm, and of wind energy, that these three are in harmony, one is healthy. When one is ill, it's because one or two, that these two or three of these humours are now out of balance. And because the humours of wind energy or phlegm or bile are out of balance, one of a wide variety of illnesses afflict one's body. So in such a case, we do not get angry with our humours for being out of balance, although we are suffering. Or to perhaps express it in a more modern way, if our body on a cellular level is not in balance, we don't get angry with ourselves. That would be crazy. Although we are suffering, we are ill. In the third line, then why get angry at those with mind? So this then is presenting now in the third line, what this verse is really getting at, that when we are experiencing illness, we do not get angry at the cause of that illness, which is our humours being out of balance, because we do not get angry at our humours being out of balance. So why do we get angry with those with mind? So like a person.
Koyo ngala nyo sonse nyo bi gyumtsen je ne kol kol nang go wa da pa len lo se ko ma tu wa je che san se ko ma tu wa de kan re no ko ma tu wa che pa kol la ya de nyo pa len lo ya di a de gyumtsen ga sam je koyo ngala nyo sonse shi a di gyumtsen chi che go wa che san koyo ngala mi di ngala nyo ba yin za nge mi de ya an ko len lo da kol nang go se de gyumtsen nyo bi gyumtsen je de she ba yin na ane che za da ma zo le ne na zo yong ne na ze ke du nye na zo kiyo de lung tu pe ken sum ane jige tu bi genji chama nyo bi genji ane ne na ji ya zu nyu du was ma zo nyu du was she sang ga zo nyu ban za ne le ya ane ne na se jung je ken di lung tu pe so chama nyo bi jung ne de le ya ane ma zo kha lang gu da din lang gu de lang mi du was ne ba yi me ji bo de was wa kyo rang ga sa di nga le nyu so se nyu bi gyum sen jin de pa kho la se bo kum tu me ba na le kon lang go ne da kon la di an de ne gi nyom mo ba je ka so de den de dong a je ge yu jo ne gi mu ti pe ga so tu cham min yu ba jo ne de la ne kon lang go ro kon lang mi do ka se ne kon lang go de gyum sen ga se ne ti nga de ne gi do as.
The reason we will give why it is appropriate to get angry at someone who's harming us is because that person is harming me intentionally. This is what we believe. They are, with intention, they are saying these words. Maybe they're thought and planned and they're saying them or doing things that are impeding my wishes. So therefore, this person is harming us with intent. So this is usually how we would explain or justify our getting angry or harming in response. So the analogy in the first two lines shows that when we are suffering due to illness, that illness has a source, which is, let's say, the cells of our body, there's something wrong, and therefore we are now ill. But we don't get angry at the source of our suffering, our body, but we now want to get angry at a person. So it's showing the disconnect between getting angry at something that is with mind, as opposed to how we don't get angry with something without mind.
Anda jisa danga zui ne dele da dinma ne dele ya ane nga zugi ne di nga zu lule ne di ko gyujin choa du ane gyujin choa ba nza to ne la ne di kie gi yin ma res ko da ne kie gi gyu dan jin choa yong ba nza choa ba nza ne di ki go res di ki go ba ko rangwa me ba ji gyujin choa ba nza ko rangwa me ba ti bu ne di tu go res was adi samdana dugores. Gaza di Anzula Nubi Samba Gigor was, Nubi Samba, ne de Lecor Rameba, and the Gugin Soba didn't do your was out, did do your day, Cornangos Kayamar. Did it? Meeting Anzula Nubis, cause some Dangor, some Gigor watches that, could Nubi some Dangor, didn't it? Middle Dolan Chogruasi or that. The niggas that to go to Slenru, Javaina, the Javaina, that does in Lavaina, then. And pa do senihan
So if I say to you, but why do you get angry at a person who causes you harm, but not at the cells in your body when you get ill? There's a disconnect, because you're not angry at the cells, although they are leading to your sickness, but now you're angry at this person who is leading to you being upset. You being harmed. So why the different response? So the response almost certainly would be, well, the illness is not harming me with intent, or my body is not intentionally going out of balance and therefore I'm getting sick. My body's not doing this with intent. But that person planned what they wanted to say. This was no mistake. They meant every word of it. So therefore, the person is harming us with intent. So it's right of me to respond in an assertive manner.
Dunga se de koron gyujin chobale ne gyaware kolo samno manzo nuege samno khatango mare ko gyujin chobale ne gyaware chesa miti gyaware 대단 가사 자기 막 가사 세디 가서 뇌비게 삼바 가서 추뇌게 가서 저어지 가서 뇌가 선배 삼로 요로 와 대상도 콘란 초로 와세 대내게 수 렌제 관지 민무수 여바 있네 디고를 동고서 매나 현대 대내게 렌제바 있나 안 될래 견가로 요래사시 대도나시디레 다 될래 야 견가로 요래시다 대내 있나 안에 가로 요래시나 네디 귀신 초바 인자 라와메 바 개와레세 김전 디 임바이나 미대양 대소를 대대야 대다 군장 진지굴 세대 대다 군자세 아서는 네베지게 미대게 대서장 맞은 네베지에 라마메 보고기를 녀모게제 녀모게 진지 온게 그 미들 라마요 말 제가 미들 녀모게와에서 대 녀모게 진지 꾸이냐서는 네베체와레스 제가다 라마요 말레스 직발에 세다다 그런 게 누가디 귀신 초발에 끼는 거라면 뭐 깨와래 세세베나 미징 알아들는 데 버기에 대야 안에 그런 게 줄래 묘모 깨네 귀신 묘모의 깨지 안에 꾸이네 안에 라면 봐 제가 또 두스네 버기와래 제가 니가 누가디 주 귀신을 라면 봐 깨와대다 미징 알아들는 데 버기에 대야 묘모 말 때네 라면 봐 주어디 직발에도 와서 올다잖아.
So what's presented here really is the internal process that one does go through, in that one recognizes the foolishness of getting angry in response to something inanimate, but we do all too often justify getting angry at the animate, at someone with a mind, in that the one with a mind is harming us with intent. The one without a mind, such as the cells in our body, there's no intention there. So we make this division. But the fourth line in the verse points out that that is a false division. All of them are also impelled by conditions. So the reason we get ill is because certain causes and conditions have come about. So again, the three humours, they are out of balance. Or there's something wrong with our cells or whatever, and we get sick. So in dependence on causes and conditions, we are ill. Likewise, the person who acts towards us in a way we dislike, that entire process has come about also in dependence on causes and conditions. And both the person, let's say someone is speaking, the person issuing sound, or the body being out of harmony and illness results, both happen under the control of causes and conditions. There is no free will either within the body or within the person speaking or acting to us in an unwanted way. Both are without freedom. Neither is expressing free will. Neither are independent, but dependent on causes. When the causes come together, causes and conditions, the result will follow.
미디 먼저 루아가 네버키에티 아니 유코줄라 녀모 방아서 네베 산비기 녀모 제와인사 니기 라와메 바 녀모 바텔 라와메 바 주와레스 라와메 바 주와레 녀모 라와메 바 주와레 제자 라와메 주와레스 제자 네 대양 말아서 류래 네 나서 네 대양 그런게 네 뒤에 유 규단 진 초발에 되네 네 대 라와메 바 주와레 제자가 저기 류래시 네다 신 저게 가지를 네버치 네야기 네베티게 자와 차사 규단 찐진 줍네 안 규단 찐래 되는 두바 이메데 지바레스 제가 규단 찐래 되는 두바 지바엔자 고 아니 규단 찐이 제부 중어도 규단 찐이 중어도 제부 맞게를 깨와라 라와요 마 기부 되게 주용어레스 제가 되네자 다 미들이야 되네게 녀몽 원기 라와메 바 류응이 제바 녀바리 깨와인자 미들이야 아주 파코라 사체 아니 미들이야 닝제세 닝제 공부하면도 콜이야 콜로 사체요 말해서 다 콜로 사요 말해서 제가 들이야 콜로 마사지 아니 샤고 공부를 콜로사나 콜 미들이라요 말아봐서 그래서 콜길 녀몽한테 녀몽 배상와도 소와레와스 배나가 저기 누가게디 라와메 바코 니 나지게도 그런 규진 나지게 규진 차와다 라와메바 나지디 끼고로 봐서 티나시 미디게한테 네버체디 콜라 녀모바 계지 녀모바 라와메바 미디라 라와메바한테 도시네바 쳐와레스 제다다 라와요 마레스 닝제세 베니스케마 미디리아 네네게 미디리아 좀 파콜라제 네위게요 마레스 데서버 공고리에서 중고를 받았다.
So one can quite easily understand that in terms of harm from the inanimates, such as illness, that this has come about in dependence on causes and conditions. There is no free will. So it makes no sense to get angry at something that acted without free will. The body didn't choose to become out of balance and thereby leading to illness. So that's the first thing, is to recognize that. Then to take that recognition and apply it to sentient beings. And recognize that if a person is either speaking to us in a way we dislike or physically acting in a way we dislike, they are not doing so with free will, but are rather under the control of their afflictions. Therefore, just like an illness, there is no free will here. It's rather causes and conditions have come together, and the result naturally follows. So we need to understand that those who harm us are actually no different from ourselves in that they are also victims of their afflictions and habitual patterns, which have been developed by a complex web of causes and conditions. And now we are the recipient of that. We are caught up, involved in their complex web of causes and conditions. When we really take that to heart, it firstly greatly aids the practice of patience, in that we recognize what is being expressed by this person, physically or verbally, is merely an expression of their mind, which itself is an expression of the coming together of a variety of causes, conditions, and in this case, most probably afflictions. And this is what's being expressed to us, nothing more. So when that's taken to heart, the mind will naturally be patient, undisturbed in the face of this adversity, because you will not be taking it as something personal about you, but rather that this person is expressing their complex web of afflictions and habitual patterns towards you. This is all. So in this way, patience will readily arise when that understanding is taken to heart. With the arisal of patience, with an undisturbed mind, one can readily recall one's other training, recognizing that this being, dominated by afflictions, is therefore necessarily suffering. They may not even experience their current state as suffering, but we know through our prior study and meditation that if one's afflicted, one is suffering and creating the causes for further suffering. So with a patient mind, a mind that's undisturbed in the face of this adversity, compassion for the suffering being will readily arise for us. So this then is how one comes to practice patience in this case.
Yeah. Then my Berna so the Peru Summer, Berna Mudu Shindo Yang, Nadu Chor Guratar. Deshin Mudu Shindo Yang, Nanju Yumo Chor Gurus.
The 23rd verse. For example, although not wished for, illnesses such as this arise. Similarly, although not wished for, afflictions persistently arise.
Berna said that Berna Mudu Shindo Yang, Nadu Chor Guratar. Chazanda on the P. Lula, Ne Nasachon, Ne Nasachon, and Nedi, Koran Mudu do Koran Gujin Sang do Gida Kin Chazan Kiegi, Gujin Sang do, Koran Kiegi do Men Alco, Chikium Gores, Kin Kigores, Jungor was, Jungor Hesed. Dinashi, Dishi Mudu do Yang, Nany Yomo Jungor Gurus, and as Milia, Yomo you, then Yi Medewa. 이 메데와 셈마기 와라서 차용도 내내게 유모 유규디 긴 차상 상용도 아니 디기기 아니 아주리아 가사텔리아 녀모디 난주 녀모기 연구 중국어리에서 다던다라 녀모 아주 내기 규진 차상 상나 아니 내디 중국도 와서 디나시 녀모기 규진 차상 상바이나 아주그 녀모 기고리에서 대라오면 기고리 디 지고리에서 올다.
And
So this is an example of, or to illustrate what has just been presented in the 22nd verse. So in the 23rd verse we have, for example, although not wished for, illnesses such as this arise. What this means, illness doesn't will itself into existence. An illness is merely an expression of causes and conditions coming together, resulting in illness arising. And when the particular causes meet their ripening conditions, illness cannot but ripen, cannot but arise. And similarly, the third and fourth line, although not wished for, afflictions persistently arise. So in the same way, when the causes and conditions come together, afflictions will naturally ripen, will naturally arise. They cannot but arise when the causes and conditions come together. One doesn't need to wish for the affliction to arise or will them into existence. Causes and conditions come, they will arise.
Nala, Tading on the Karagu Chesan Nedi, Yuna, Jin, Sobala, Dini, Nedi, Chumu, Nedi, Ramameba, Jungores, Joa Nashin, Da, Azil, Yomo, Ye, Yu, Sobaina, Tan Delia, Dini, Yomoji, Ramameba, Yomo, Chunguduas, Dinza, Dan, Dina, Deshi, as a Kansa, never chetty, Quikula, Yomo Jawa Inza, Yomodi. Yomo but two in that didn't answer the never chatty, Unguaris, Chesan Rahoyo Marki, Chesa DGS. This one to talk until you indicate Senada as a Kansa never chevaina, Kansa Coron Gum Mare, Kansa della Rahoyo Mare, Kansa de Yomo Shawa Soware, Chesa that you in Chesa Yomo but the Chevaris, Chesa that you and the Yomo but the Takuris, Chesa that Yomo but Tanita. Ranshin Yomo by the Yambo Tinge, Yambo to Mema Sword, Mato, Kansa de la Corona, never get Chicho money, as it, the night it is more about that.
The meaning of this verse is that in the same way that illness is merely a result of causes and conditions, that there is no room or no role for intention, for free will, for illness willing itself into existence. Similarly, a person does not will into existence their afflictions. Rather, they naturally arise in dependence on causes and conditions coming together. In both of these processes, the inanimate and the animate, there's no role for free will. In other words, this doesn't happen independently. One doesn't get ill independently, but dependently. Afflictions do not arise independently, but dependently.
And the Dinma Karasungor Sene, Azuki Tibu Yagitat, Mazuki, Tibu Kia, Karekevine, Guchilatini Kiores, Gulatini Kiore, Gulatimba, then Gia Tibu Ki, 2 Nubican, Nubigi. Nubican Guchilatini Kiores, Nubikin Kiawas, and to Tibu Ki Gusum Shore, Nubikile Kiawa, Anagasore, Muicule Kiawa. Ne tümbüküle kiawa said. Tümbüküle kiawa. Dene nübüküle kiawa. Dene müyüküle kiawa said.
Ifa.
Tümbüküle kiawa. Nübüküle kiawa. Müyüküle kiawa. Müyowa. Kujumada said. Müyüküle kiawa said some shiware. Says that that what the some shiware. Said nübüküle kiawa said. Güdüle tebukiye nübüçkore. Nübemena debu güdüge Tewiki two mares, Chesson Nubish Code, Chesadan Anzulia, Dumaki, good Nuba Chesan Sama, and that Nuba Deletine, Dewit, Dumadi Ungores, Chesadan Anzulia, Jig, Lunga, Japan, number Yonaki, Chavache, Gu, and Yomo, but the Nuba in the Kivaina, then they Deletine Ungores. Then Karine answered Denigi, Tadandala, Nubicule Kiwa, says you, Donati the Denigi. Q Tebuki, Nuba Chesan Sans, have you to Sawaina, then Devoti Kigris, they gave it Magiela, Toby Tabioma, or Totabioma, Devoti got 2 months or that.
And it Yodangi drew some song, it look at me, kind of the atrocity.
Then what did you get? Is Dagidajo? Yeah.
This presentation, we need to take to heart to deepen our understanding that the results that we wish for, as well as unwished for results, all come about independent on causes. If the causes and conditions come together, the result is inevitable. And this is the case for all that is wished for, as well as what we would prefer to avoid. So there are different I'm not sure how to translate this terminology, but let's try. There are various components that need to come together for the causes to ripen. Gela mentioned 3 and explained 1, so I'll mention the 1 now. And that is something like the cause of potency, which means that the cause itself, the seed, the karmic cause, needs to have the maybe potential as opposed to potency, the potential, the potency to ripen. So the the cause needs to have the potential to be able to ripen. So that's the first of three.
미개와 제비기 유메가와 제벌 된 제고 되기 되고 대화 용하여 말더니 비튼 바래서 지사다 미튼 바래 지사 튠비기를 깨워 미개와 동화 깨워래 대화를 때네 가서 개와 제벌 된 대화 깨워래서 니나시 나저 주 내게 사원 답을 되는 유고 내 유고 깨우마도 아니 셴셴나 유고 깨요 말해서 지사 튠비기를 깨워래서 지사다 저 니네기 셈제네 미나 지게 아주 미케디 튠비 미치를 요마다 셈제 둔돌에 미케요 말해서 밀레 셈제 둔돌에 게다 개요 말해서 다같이 규단 대부디 튠바치 고고래서 왔다데
just to the day others keep your cockroach up in a tuple down to catch your home that it was.
So the first of these three maybe components to the cause that need to come together for to ripen was the cause of potential potency, that the cause itself must have the potential to ripen. If it doesn't have the potential to ripen, no result's going to come from it. So that's the first. Then the second is a concordant cause. So what this means is there needs to be a concordance between the cause and its result. This means that from a wholesome cause, a desired, a happy, a virtuous result will come. Or virtuous cause will lead to a happy result. From a non-virtuous or unwholesome cause, suffering will follow. So the second component is that of concordancy, in that from virtue follows happiness, from non-virtue follows suffering. There is no other permutation available.
나 미우의 줄에 깨봐셔야지 대티시고래 난 지로 발라서 비게 아주게 뒤지 용어의 미다 심장 칼에 초보이네 아니 지게 권조기 당보 삼루파 직파 삼루기 이 대티시고 선배 삼루치기 되네 대부디 중국어래 제자데 삼비 요와 제시 삼비 요와 제네 깨와래서 이거를 대티고래 다른 안주게 낭백이 되네기 가르케베 차사 담보 꿀롱게 삼배 지 삼바지 요 가서 원도 다 르지게 되는 지인 삼배 요 원도 다주 다디 된바 가서래 권초사디 권초기 삼루기 요 다제 디우게와르선 디마레스 소수기 규단 겐지 두비 규단 겐레 되는 조물 규단 겐메바제 안지 권초기 삼루지 어디기 어떻게 요 되는 삼단 게게 말레스 미우의 길에게와 미요와
예바네
디시오마 요와세네 셈기 요와세 셈기 파지 죄네 개와래세요.
셰퍼페인 또 신이드 프로데네 아스고
예메데 디신데스 카가레 다데 요모요세데 지다 요와세데 디네 삼로다지 개와디 두아 여러와디데 다데 가르스네 지딩기 최 뭐뭐 뒤지기 최 간데 이내야 권조기 쇠바레스 권조가 간데 쇠바스네 권조 당보 삼로다 디쇠고도 선배 삼당의 된지 내용 두고 레체르다 쟁이 당보 셈제 쇠고도 안지 셈제 건조 사야 갈쇠고 디쇠고도 선배 되네게 삼권적이 봐 셈기 봐 삼다제 바권적이 셈기 가서 요와 당제 아이 당보 요와 파당 되네 제고 두용 레세 지수월 낭베디 말에서 요미 길레세디 되네게 요와 셈기 요와 마연바 제 규단 찔레디네 And
the third requirement, not entirely certain how to translate the term in this context, but the term is immovable or unfluctuating, unwavering. So this is the third requirement. What its meaning is, this is now I can say clearly, but what its meaning is that non-Buddhists all too often will posit that a cause will be the mere thought of the Creator God. The Creator God thinks something into existence, or we'd maybe say they will it into existence, but through the Creator God wanting something to happen, it happens. Or not happen, it doesn't happen. So this is a common view amongst non-Buddhists. So this is not accepted by Buddhists, of course. So this would be an unwavering condition, I think I said. Immovable or unshakable, unfluctuating, unwavering condition. So this is the third type. So this immovable cause would be the Creator God willing something into existence through thought, or something to happen or not happen. And this isn't how things happen in reality. Thought is involved, but it is done by the person involved in the activity as a precursor to the potential activity. So if one thinks, I want to eat something, then from this thought process, one will embark on putting one's food together and then having something to eat. So there is a thought, and from this follow other thoughts and activity. So that certainly is required. But what plays no role is something that comes about independence without appropriate causes, such as the will of a Creator God.
지자다 가사 뉴비 김생기 알레 뉴비 김생기 코로나 걸람나 되는 아주 녀모 받들어 코로나 걸 와스 세상 아주 녀모 받 뉴거래 내나서 게 내들 코로나 걸에 내기 주 아니 누티 배가 좀 참여뉴 받들어 코로나 걸 와스 코로나 민도 와스 제사데 차상은 디수기 되는 중국으로 와스 제단 유 디설에 되는 내가 저기 꽤 맞다 와지 가사 코로나 얘기한다 와지 디고 말해서 올다 된다라.
So again, the meaning of what is presented here and what one needs to take away and cultivate within is to recognize that afflictions arise independent on a web of causes and conditions. There is no free will there. Someone doesn't have under free will generate an affliction and act under its influence. And this is just like with the arisal of illness. The cells in one's body do not choose to go out of harmony or out of balance, and therefore one gets sick. And the consequence of this understanding is that there is no valid basis for anger. Because usually we say, my anger was justified because of what they said or what they did. But here we come to recognize this was done without free will, just like the inanimate, just like the movement of cells within the body leading to illness. And if one particularly wants to get angry and point at the actual source of what went wrong, in the case of a person who was, let's say, expressing their anger at us, well, then we could say, okay, we could be angry at their anger, because it's their anger that led them to speak or act in that way. But if that makes sense to you, then when you're ill, you should have equal anger for your cells for being out of harmony or for the germs that have come into your body, whatever it may be. And that would be silly. But that is the cause of one's anger, the one's cause of one's illness. So it comes back to, in this reflection, that there is really no valid basis to get angry, because when the afflictions arise in all of us, independent on causes and conditions, there is no free will. It is not independent, but dependent.
Dan denegi ni lamrim nala karasungu dusena michi ganzule jogwa shina michi ganzu neba chineta jogwa shuweina dan jogwa shuye di jogwa ganzule lulu ne hengweni di jogwa dirwa chisanga du jogwa dilo khoro malama ji midile garjin khornan gores sugu ganzule zubule nazi tangan dechi jogwa dirwa chisanga du jogwa dilo khornan gores ganzu ne heng ngosu ne heng di jogwa dire enza diele khorma de midile khornan gi do midile khornan go kamera ganzu ngosu ne heng mi mare was chizadi khornan go kimche de chi o mare se azu khorlana ngazu ngosu ne heng jogwa dilo khornan gore dilo khorma mara ba che ngazu ngosu ma de midile garchen khornan gores ti khornan go mare se.
An illustration you'll know from the Lamrim is that if someone hits us, they hit us with a stick, this of course causes pain, and if we get angry, if we really want to get angry, we should get angry at that stick, because it was the stick hitting our skin, our body, that caused the pain to arise. The person didn't directly touch us. The person was a meter away from us, perhaps. So if we want to get angry at the stick, because it's that directly harmed us. But of course, that would be a little silly to do so.
Na dele ya chi lenja we na karina to tukose. O dadi jogwa delo nganzo subolo ngoso naztangan naztegen de jogwa de hede. Jogwa korong la ne le mare midigi jene ne jogwa de naztawar wa chizada jogwa de nganzo lule chikai 네기 긴디 된 미디기 제발했어. 미디기 마제베나 저거디 제야 마스 미디기 제발해 와스. 된장도 미디리아 권한 거래서. 되네 라바이나 안나 아니 미디야 라와요 말 미디야 코르디 유르 코르데 뇨모바케 뇨모바 라마요 말에 지사다네 미디를 권한 겁니다. 대시 결혼을 교과를 권한 거야 말세. 그래서 교과디 라와메 바지 미디기 쉬바 미디를 권 쉬게 미디를 권한 걸 메도 교과를 권하고 민도아 여기도 디나시네 되네인다 미디라에 라와요 먹고 뇨모바 공시하고 소화래. 지산도 권한을 뇨모바들 권한 걸 메도 미디를 권하고 민도아스.
And the usual response would be, but why should I get angry at the stick? The stick didn't willingly hit me. The stick was under the control of the person who wielded the stick. That's why I'm angry at them, and I'm right to be angry at them. And there the response, as we've seen in this verse, would be, but the person had no free will. The afflictions met their ripening conditions, and there they were, compelling, controlling that person, leading them to express their afflictions upon you by means of the stick. So if you really want to get angry at something, get angry at their afflictions.
Dine zada mil rawa meba nyomo be shama so ba inda ta nyobe jin zo de shawa so nyomo ba de mi de la ma to nyobe jin mi de le yin je ta mi ko la rawa yo ma res ta nyomo be ji che ba res de ta nyomo ba le kyun ta je ta nyomo ba de pa pa ya ge nyomo de ya la be so she wo re se ji ta ma ju chu je na so ya de ta de ni ro.
Having reflected well on what's presented here, one will come to readily recognize that people are acting without freedom, but rather under the control of their afflictions. Therefore, knowing that they are suffering and creating the causes for suffering, for further suffering, compassion will readily arise for that afflicted being, as well as one's own determination. I have to abandon the afflictions, because here again, I see the results of the afflictions.
And la digging another can some dangugores and some dana do sin some dangugores that object to Shinangorwa, Chedine is a dang do some dadu, that midi another never chedi, that good and yen, Yomo Beshawanzo, Yomon let in the key to us, 제사다 내나서 중요하게 게 내유 게인지 창에도 될때는 기기도 와 제사 당한도 시게디 제사다 되니기 아즈리에 내나서 게아이나데 된 요모게디 요모인주 이 미대와 차상 창로도 연대되는 요모 기기도 와 제사 당한도 내나서 게아이나데 한강 미생기 라라는 네버체 유니버티기 나데 단 아주 라신이게 그렇게 요모바티 나 차사다 유다 긴 소발에 되는 기도와 세베다 윤지기 텐제 삼다제 윤지기 텐제 윤지를 렌제를 이세바 되는 삼다 오다디 이세바 디사다 녀모바 제와네 디바디 동아 요아디 디용도와 세베다 녀바 하고와체 되는 녀바지 되네 안나주게다 개위 디위 자와시네 대화로시네 개화 두발에 되는 기도와 제단 규테네 용의 규진 녀바리도와 제네 인자다 규디 줍사나 제보 주에 이제도와 세베다 되네기 제바 삼다제 녀바서다 되네기 규델에 되네 제보 규 야호 녀모바다 되네기 미가 주바이나 델레티네 강아다 동아시 용의 바데 타쳐바레 규 개와주 세보콤 되네기 진발라서바 되네 냠네 쳐바네 디디부 디기리요 타쳐바레스네 녀바니에 세드다 셔라 녀바세바 레균지기 균제를 이체베게 되네 제바 삼다다 때때 레도와 삼베게 녀바니 녀바니네 되네 가래 되네게다 개회 잡아라 되는 두바이나 대할 되는 대화 대기 용어 녀바니바이자 되네게 가서 두고에 가서다 개와디 야후도 세지 매바제 제사디 개와 두여야 야네 야노 삼다 개회 잡아 두바 될다 매바 네 천나 녀바 심비 쇠바세 티체고래 제사다 동아여에게 규리다 녀모바다 되네게 미가와티는 용구바리 타쳐바래 대행사다 녀모바다 빵고도 셈베다 녀모바 빵바 토고도 셈베 something 녀바세다 되네게 녀모 빵고도 녀모바 빵바 토고 셈베 토비야기 뭐바세다 디야호레 셈베 녀모 빵바디 야호레 셈베 삼다이도 뭐바르와 대전 디토요도 야네 베즈 제바텔다 철랑 녀바셈베 뭐바세데 다 철랑 녀바셈베 제가 검나디 디차고 제사다 다디디 레균데 규다 깨를 때네 동아다 되게 쳐서 규다 깨를 때네 중소와 선배 레균데 이체비게 녀바니네 되네 아니 개위디 개와체 발라 때네 아니 디키야디 용고바다 될라 녀바니 타취 되네 미고와 제발에 되네 녀모바도 미고와 제발에 될레는 동아 용고바다 녀바니 타취 되네 자다 타취 봐서다 대화유 개위 잡아들라 매바 야고레스티 야나야노 주에 배수시야다 되네 동아 유 녀모바다 되네게 돼서 네 야고면도 대방호도 될레방배 타르바 토반 야고레스메 타르바 타에게 삼노디 이 매바게 전데 야나야노 배수시는 제바인자 냠네 제고베자 될리야데 철랑 매바센스 매바센발은 매배쇠바세티 냠네 제탄디 디차고래.
So the way to meditate on this, I'd advise to meditate on this in the following way. So recognize how that what one encounters comes about independent on causes and conditions. And think about both the animate and the inanimate. So the inanimate example would have been illness. Causes come together, meeting the ripening conditions, and illness arises. So too, with speech and physical behavior, these come about in dependence on the mind. The mind itself, for the various minds that lead to speech and physical behavior, have their own causes and conditions. Habituation to responding in certain circumstances in certain ways. Other causes, perhaps how the person's day has been, or how they're physically feeling, and so forth. All these causes that come together, that lead to their mind being in a particular state, and then they meet something, and a further condition comes, and they speak in a certain way, act in a certain way. This is all that's going on around us, within others, within ourselves. This dance of causes meeting ripening conditions and being expressed. So this, we sit quietly and we observe it within ourselves and around us. Recognize this interplay of causes and conditions leading to results. We reflect well on this. It has a profound impact on the certainty in various pivotal aspects of the Dharma. One being karmic cause and effect. That independence of particular causes being cultivated and them meeting the ripening conditions, the result will naturally come about. The strength of the causes will lead to the proportionate strength of the result. That recognition is greatly important because that then leads to one's determination to accumulate virtue and to refrain from non-virtue. And in particular, what that means to really be clear on what accumulating virtue and avoiding non-virtue means. Strengthening our habituation to wholesome ways of thinking and breaking our habituation to unwholesome or afflicted ways of thinking. What aids this is when we recognize that particular thought patterns and the resultant speech and behavioral patterns come about independent, not just on those causes, but the strength of those causes. So if one is deeply habituated to a certain way of thinking, one will readily give rise to that. One will be easily enraged. Attachment will easily arise, or compassion will naturally arise. So in this way, we can see that independence on the strength of the causes and the habituation to them, the ripening result will come about with great ease or great difficulty. This too further deepens our understanding of cause and effect and our determination to cultivate virtue and break our habituation to non-virtue. And this will guide us both in our meditation, but also outside of our meditation. And this is crucial because to bring about a transformation in our way of thinking, we need to engage in formal practice, hearing teachings and reflecting on them. But when we not engage in formal practice, to be aware of our mind and notice whether it is wholesome or whether it's tending towards afflictions, and to take corrective action where needed. This, by bringing our practice into our daily life like this, will bring about change quickly, because what we are trying to do is to strengthen our habituation to a certain way of thinking and break it in others. This requires watching our mind at all times, again and again correcting our way of thinking, ensuring our mind stays virtuous. So in brief, thinking like this gives us a far deeper understanding of karmic cause and effect, leading to a determination to abandon afflictions, to cultivate virtuous ways of thinking. And from this, then an additional outcome is a yearning for liberation arises. Because a yearning for liberation means a breaking with afflictions. And that comes about through a deep and profound habituation to wholesome ways of thinking.
내나스다 규단 견레티네 중고래 제사다 셴이 녀바 제바대한 규단 견레티네 중고래 셴규 녀몬바 제바대야 라와메바 규단 견레티네 중고래 제사데네 자규 규단 견레티네 중고바데 레균제 데네기 균제게 남샤데 두치네 삼단데 균제세데 근데 어다디 타쳐버리도 와세비다 규사치베 대부미에다 타쳐버리도 와세비다 레균제레 이체비 이체 이층에 받던 분이네 되는 레규의 송구리에서 매바신데 되는 레규의 송을 되네게 쇠바 매바 제스게바 첼랑에 쇠바세 누스티슈바체 나디야 되스 상직 되스 sabs 당와나 야직 안 되네게 되지 내나서 줘야다 녀모 먹게야다 가스기네 봐 녀야기 채워지죠. 차상의 규단建立的 조화를 현대 되는 도마다 강라에 마디와 랑응은 주되게 덴버 주비게다 랑응은 주비게다 랑응은 주 강라에 마디 랑응은 주비게다 내나서 내나서 세요 말에 nyummasya yo mare, ten shenginga le nyoswasya yo mare, chisan chasayana gyudan kien le tuyne rupsam chimato, matyoba, kala yamato, rangongoni rupa zawagini mea sepe samdaya de yang 동바 니고 삼다에 차용로 되네게 삼다네 되네게 대신 저주에 대신 참mol이야 매번이네 갈래 떠보면 바람은 싸우기 매세베 매번이네 되네게 매번이네 되네 갈래 떠보면 랑문이 좀 마두바티 엔텔이야 아니 안에 안도 공부체디 네네 공부체 제토바텔다 지금 예바세베 세바세데 온도신데 잘 삼다네 되니 삼다에 차용로
Meditate in this way. Recognize how all that arises within your own mind and thereby gets expressed through your speech and behavior is the coming together of causes and conditions. This is all. So too with those around you and the material world as well. This leads to a deepening faith or trust in karma, which is, of course, indispensable. Take this then now a step further. So recognizing how what is going on is this dance of interdependency, causes that have been created, meeting their conditions and ripening. We can focus on cultivating certain causes, avoiding others, strengthening our habituation to virtue, breaking our habituation to non-virtue. Then we take this, so that's all been presented already. Now we take it to one further step. As all that arises comes about independently, nothing therefore is independent. Everything is dependent, comes about dependently. Nothing is independent. So this word then, independent, can be expressed in different ways. Nothing exists by way of its own nature or essence or defining characteristics, because if it did, it would be independent. It wouldn't require causes and conditions to ripen. So here we come to recognize that because everything is a dependency, rising in dependence on causes and so forth, it doesn't exist independently, doesn't exist by way of its own nature, doesn't exist by way of its own essence, doesn't exist by way of its own defining characteristics. It is not self-existent. It is empty of existing in this way. So this is how you take this meditation, and it leads to deepening your meditation on emptiness.
당사디 뇌바체 딩아들 뇌바테다 뇽모베 샤원도 교체 뇽모발레 때네 샤원도 교인 가사텔라 라와메바 뇽 샤원도 교체한도 뇌바체 말이 대자다 가사라 라와메바레 제가 가사텔라 뇽모베 샤원도 소와세 닝지에스베 닝지야마도 텔리아 코르게야다 아니 되네게 뇌바치 파렌 뇌바치 디삼다교 말에 제가 수고 공고레스 되버스 되네게 삼다체 파니시게 니시게 semmatubaj pa korla pa ka hores and dinigida gyuda gele de jungwa da hawo yadu tizada dinigi du kan de chine gyuda gele de tuba de gyutup sana gendi ge gen chasan sawan da de bu tu yin ba de sha sibeta le gyude le ngeba ni ne da le gyude so ale ne ngeba ni ne ngeba za di hawo ne ne ge wa tu ya ya ni chi ge wi tu ge wa cha wa tu ya ya ne ya tu ya da dinigi ane dipo pointi ane yane yandu pointi tamran besu shadi diri sashi an kodonala dona disitu atuke lekun li yichi chene dan giwe jawa digi tukowa yanza digi yu an gewa di yane yandu tukori sada da dunga yung video baza dunga yoya yu migawa digi ane yane yandu pa meba kaya da sungkori sashi sungkori sashi dine zada lekyunde le yichepi ngeba di yesebi chela dine king lekyunde soya ke da nyamne chegori esachi da donale dile ya nga neji chigen gyudila nga neji nyogen dila chobi gyumse ga yo mares 제자미들 라오면 바리스 권유비 치르선에 아니 고션 내나서티 안여비 내고라 딜레이 춘지로 디토입니다. 예바 삼세데 콜라라오면 바리스 녀바디 한수 녀바디 라오면 바리스 제산 콜리아 콜라교 말스 데네기 김제 삼다제 콜리아 쉐보고미야 아니 니시기야 삼다 데네기다 두체네 나 라오면 귤레티니 개완자 레균들의 이체에 번예네 레균들 송야디 삼당을 해서지 다던선 마손의 닝보라면 숨로시 도와대 숨 레균을 써야 될래야 됐어 다 삽시에는 된된전 저와 주비게 이마다 가야 강래 되면 랑은 주비게 최가야 요마레스 비게 안도바 있음 다야다 그래서 인디 도와줘서 되는 게 쉬어야 되다.
So in the time apart until we come together again next week, take what's presented here and meditate well on this, recognizing there's a dance of dependence arising. Watch how your own mind, whatever arises, comes about in dependence on causes and conditions, and then is expressed in your speech and your behavior. And you recognize how this is just where you have a stronger habituation in some areas. This is how one more naturally goes. Where the habituation is weak in other areas, much more effort is required. And this is the case for ourselves, as well as for others, as well as for the inanimate world. Understanding that deepens our understanding of cause and effect. And it also, because the mind is now much more relaxed about what's happening about you, in terms of when others give one a hard time, one will more readily be patient with us, allowing compassion to arise, recognizing that this person who's acting in an unskillful manner, whether it's at you or someone you observe in the world, they are doing so without freedom, without free will, but are rather merely expressing the causes that have been accumulated, nothing more. So there are three key steps that you can reflect on. How? That through dependence arising, beings act without freedom, ourselves as well as others. And this is the basis for compassion, as well as trust in cause and effect. And if you've reflected previously on dependence arising in emptiness, the link is very clear. If something comes about in dependence on causes, so that's understanding of cause and effect, it is not independent. It doesn't exist in the way that it appears. It is empty of existing in the way that it appears. And then this meditation, you can utilize, deepen your understanding of emptiness as well. So we can conclude there a bit earlier tonight, but if you have questions, then by all means do ask. Venerable Lobsang?
Sometimes when a situation arises and somebody appears to get angry, but and shows kind of disdain, happiness, yet your reaction to that is that you build from it, because they're not pointed that somebody you're false to something like that. So how does that regard the issues of anger as opposed to this, because there may be anger mixed with it, that it comes out in for you in a positive way.
So if someone talks down to you, talks to you with disdain, then sometimes you may get a bit upset, but you can also learn from what they've said, because maybe what they've said is not so nice, but true. And so can Geshe say something on that?
Yeah, just around that mixed kind. It's like a mixed in the sense.
Okay.
Can I sometimes and example that for made up kind of like Geshe. Can I call so many auto consultative there? Cruiser paper, you need jump on it. Get up to me for in money to be for your money again. Can it? You might so this control key this. Yeah, so they go. Very can the guy the drop on my can imagine. Yeah, get it. Can it? Altså går du til skjert, de med en laffe drum på det, til en rats kjøpertyrlig. Det kolder til sånn. Det det nappet taktakelig, det han tror det.
예, 파셔지 안을이야. 안을 너저 임바당 소생 안을 마디바디 파셔지가 셈바 상고라 정고인이서 셰베네 가빌랑은 저 어데 셈마지와 채네 코로나 도스 코로나 응구로 와다. 어디 당아서 코로나 가르랑 것은 그 되는 기시에 되 안을 셈디 마지와를 차고 셈 이메데 와서 게레 디시는 코로나가 응구로 와다. 이제 아주 가르스는 아주 콘디도 컴퓨터 첨부해서 야세야세야 이 말이야. 지나다 디 데리시도 하다 삼다대가 쿠두들 삼다서 소소기 아주 괜히 소소라 괜히 멀린지 두고 말봐. 제가 나중에 다도len 두고 말봐. 제가 동안 다도len 받는다. 반응이 지고라. 소소기 괜히 소소기 멀린지 나 다도len 받어도 아니 뒤에도 도신 반응이 궁금한 거로 dinero 제사대가 저기 지시는 소수기들이 제사대 소수 어당의 균 dinero 거기에서 약보를 해서 비게 삼다는 소수기 다도len 어떻게 약보를 해서 비게 삼다는 되니 어디 거기 아저씨들이 팬서 약보도 등이 마음받아 되니 마치게 탑시 땡땡 제투를 해서 비게 삼다는 이제 거기서 차르고라 거기 괜히 소수기 나 당연 제제 안에 직제도 파셔로 네 디용으로와 에디니스 그들이 삼다이 되는 제품의 약셔로와 다 조디한테 가르스네 또 스튜디오가 나가는데 맞이냐리야 삼다이 계시셔를 해야 돼 되는 지 밑에 드링아 좀 투에네 지금 도와 투어셔 어디 거든지 제베는 나 되는 야 드링 콩랑 메 아트네 견지 메 아등알이야 도시 인레가 마디버티 손에 처럼 지금 있는 스미 견지 마직도 제베네 때문에 배야고로 와서 코로나는 메디베티를 쾌겨산제 배야고랭아 마음번에 되네 마요 인공고체를 팽기리 배야고랭이 파콩랑 메 아선베 디삼다이디 계시셔 디삼다베는 지금 무엇이든 투비갑라 네 셈의 장도를 여반자 딜람산 텐제 하는 서보금 투여디 제가 텐텐이야.
So what you describe there of this is where it's almost like an expression of some training in patience in that the mind didn't get too disturbed in that from how you're explaining it, you didn't explode back at them. So if that is the case, that you have been doing some training in patience and thereby you didn't get too upset, then that is good success. Where the part of the mind that did get disturbed, this shows the need for ongoing training. And the way there to do this is, especially if you know that you're meeting someone and this person, they have a habituation to condescension. So they've spoken down to you many times and they'll probably do it again today. You prepare yourself beforehand and you recognize that whatever they say is just an expression of the causes and conditions that are coming together for them. Depending how their day is, they will speak to you in a better or a worse way, and depending on the causes they bring to it themselves. So you prepare your mind well, you meet them, they once again condescend, but now your mind is well prepared and you recognize there's nothing here to grasp at as being real. Or you recognize that this is just an expression of their afflictions. It's nothing personal. And then compassion can arise for them and you can learn from the situation because there is some truth in what they're saying. So this then is just taking the training to the further level that we need to take it. So that, because where the amount of annoyance comes in the mind, this is because the mind is slightly disturbed. So in the previous segment, where we looked at the suffering of the patience of willingly accepting suffering, we see that the preceding condition for anger is that the mind becomes a little disturbed, a little unhappy. Then anger can arise. So if we take care of our mind so that that doesn't happen, we will thereby be able to willingly accept the suffering of their speech, not get disturbed, compassion arise for the afflicted person, and, like you said, learn from that situation. So like that. Cameron?
I feel, as a thought for that, is it correct to say that the other person is always generating non-virtue for themselves because of their anger even if what they say is correct and even useful.
So the person is angry, yeah, and because they're angry, are they creating non-virtue even when what they're saying is true and useful? Yeah. Okay.
Den bichik bukbum laiken, lapietet, trampode. Den kedan gikona, den går det med det. Den lungan kan det trampala kan det. Keva sagimade. Vi geva det.
Pendi labdi lung lan la vena di ko mi ga warwa anke wa sang marwa ko ni she di jambo la ware di chewa min do ko de di ko no de ka lung lan la ra ko pen pi sam lo marwa.
So even where the angry person is speaking truth, still non-virtue is created because of the anger. Yeah.
Kono mala we di kono mala wa chen ngun ya chora no ru chi du la we na pe si ke wa sang mare. 그래서 꿀로를 개와 삼los 개와 말고 디 루마데로 쳐 미가 생말 루마데로 쳐도가.
And if the person without anger points out a correct or a valid fault, they aren't necessarily creating virtue. They need that virtuous motivation. So if they just say to you in passing, especially a person of authority, to like the staff, "Oh, you're doing this wrong, you should do it like that," there's no virtuous intent there. They're really just pointing out a fault. And so that would be a neutral karmic effect, a neutral karmic action.
Jackie.
Dave?
Because if the situation arises and we respond with a virtuous mind, with choice, is that exercising free will, or is it opposed?
So if a situation arises and we respond with in a virtuous way, is that not by choice? Is that not an expression of free will?
Den want to give a record. Den lato netanchi, lato worsu, Geshe and circular. Den lato Ramon Yotbak, give us a give that back.
Kasa kesem
Lato turpa mitopa city.
do.
Turpa. Den kongi, den netanchi, la Geshe, give us an running circular.
Oh, so
The old and data nichi.
yeah, isn't that right?
Today, the Paravon Yota circular. Mitopa circular.
And Suzuki that ni kyo chi over sembe some deity like dirwa some deity that is ni ju kombana kyo chungurwa di ni ju komne kyo le ti da ni ju komye ti da bo ni ju gomgudu sembe samlo ni di khagarwa ti da ni ju komye di ni ju gomgudu sembe samlo del ti ni lewarwa da ga jerwa da ni ju gomgudu sembe samlo di karsim de bare lamna 한디 니에 코로나 김제 삼다요 니주 공부스면 삼 가르지에서는 안에 파셔 될 약간이 통해요래 강이 통해 니주 공부에 삼단 거래 야나 니주 공부에나 소소야 개의 사이클 셈비기 내 판도 유비기 디네 김제 삼대 니주 공부 삼디 차사디 겐질 주고 얼마도 맞죠 뭐야 말.
So before I give what Ken said, so when I use as a translator this word free will, it's not the Tibetan word, but it's the meaning of the Tibetan word. The Tibetan word is no freedom. What it means, because the synonyms in Tibetan then for no freedom would be without causes. So if one says, and I haven't said what Geshe is saying, but this is what will make what he says very clear, is that if I intentionally generate a virtuous mind, what you are saying there, if you're saying you have free will, is you generated that virtuous mind without any causes. And that cannot happen. Yeah, because that is the meaning. Because the Tibetan usually will be independent and dependent. But when you hear it, when I say it, these words sound so similar, the difference doesn't really come to mind. But the meaning is free will or not free will. If it's something has free will, it's not dependent on causes. And that nothing exists that way. But we believe everything exists like this. Then we think of some rough causes, but that's not even how it appears to our mind. Now to give you what Gendla said, which is, So in an instance where, for example, you generate compassion and you respond with compassion, that you could even think to generate compassion and that you knew how to generate compassion, all of that came about in dependence on causes. So there's a wide variety of causes that were required, including the situation or the person to whom compassion was generated.
Maybe this one.
Okay. So thank you, everyone. Thank you.